The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched wider than most cities. Thousands of different alien species filled the floating seats that hung in the air like glowing bubbles. Some breathed oxygen, others methane, and a few existed as pure energy. They all watched the center stage where history was about to change. Ambassador Kang sat perfectly still in the human section. Her black hair was pulled back in a simple style, and she wore a plain gray uniform that looked boring next to the colorful robes and armor of other diplomats. She had been quiet for the entire 3-hour session, listening as species after species complained about trade routes and mining rights. The Vorthak representative stepped onto the center platform. It stood 12 feet tall with 4 arms and skin that shifted between purple and red when angry. Right now it was very angry. The creature's name was impossible for human tongues to say, so most just called it Speaker Vorthak. The ancient Armistice has served its purpose, Speaker Vorthak announced, its voice booming through translation devices. 3,000 years have passed since the humans retreated to their corner of space. 3,000 years of peace and growth for all civilized species. Murmurs filled the hall. Some aliens nodded their various heads in agreement. Others shifted nervously in their seats. The humans had been quiet neighbors for so long that most younger species barely remembered they existed. The Vorthak Empire has watched and waited, the speaker continued. We have seen how the humans live in their small territory. They build no new colonies. They send no explorers. They have grown weak and lazy in their isolation. Kang's expression didn't change. She continued to sit with her hands folded, watching the speaker with dark, calm eyes. The galaxy has changed, Speaker Vorthak declared. Resources are limited. Space is precious. The humans control 17 star systems that could support billions of productive citizens from other species. This waste cannot continue. More murmurs, louder now. The Altarian delegate, a blue-skinned being with large eyes, stood up. The armistice was signed by all major powers. Breaking it would violate 3 millennia of galactic law. Speaker Vorthak's skin turned a deeper red. Laws change. The weak do not deserve protection simply because they once showed strength. The humans had their chance to join galactic civilization. They chose isolation instead. What exactly are you proposing? Asked the delegate from the Christek Collective, its voice like breaking glass. The Vorthak Empire formally declares the armistice void, Speaker Vorthak announced. Human space is now open for colonization by species that will use it properly. Any resistance will be met with appropriate force. The hall erupted in noise. Some species cheered, seeing opportunities for expansion. Others argued about legal precedents and ancient treaties. A few of the older delegates looked worried, though most couldn't remember why. Through it all, Kang remained silent. The council speaker, an ancient being whose species had helped found the galactic government, called for order. Its voice carried the weight of millennia. This is a serious matter. The human representative must be allowed to respond. All eyes turned to Kang. She stood slowly, her movements careful and precise. When she walked to the center platform, her footsteps were the only sound in the vast hall. She was small compared to most aliens present. Barely 5.5 feet tall, weighing perhaps 120 pounds. Next to Speaker Vorthak, she looked like a child. But something about the way she carried herself made other delegates lean forward in their seats. The Republic of Earth acknowledges the termination of the armistice, Kang said. Her voice was quiet, but somehow everyone could hear every word clearly. We understand that the Vorthak Empire considers our isolation a sign of weakness. Speaker Vorthak's forearms crossed over its chest. Finally, you admit the truth. Will you surrender your territories peacefully, or must we take them by force? Kang looked up at the massive alien with the same expression she might wear while reading a grocery list. Neither. Speaker Vorthak laughed, a sound like grinding stone. You have 17 small worlds and a handful of colonies. The Vorthak Empire controls 400 systems and can field fleets of 1 million ships. What possible resistance could you offer? For the first time since entering the hall, Kang smiled. It was a small expression, barely noticeable, but somehow it made the temperature in the room seem to drop several degrees. The Vorthak Empire has made an error in judgment, she said calmly. You assume that our isolation was caused by weakness. You believe that 3,000 years of peace have made us soft and unprepared. The smile grew slightly wider, and several of the oldest delegates began to shift uncomfortably in their seats. A few were starting to remember old stories, ancient warnings that had been dismissed as myths. You are wrong, Kang continued. The Armistice was never about containing humanity's weakness. It was about protecting everyone else from our strength. Speaker Vorthak's skin color shifted to an angry purple, empty words from a dying species. Your threats mean nothing. I am not making threats, Kang replied. I am simply providing information that may be useful for your military planning. The Republic of Earth will respond to your declaration of war with appropriate measures. War? Speaker Vorthak laughed again. This will not be a war. This will be a simple occupation of abandoned territory. Kang's smile became colder. Perhaps you should ask the Zelthak hegemony about their experience with simple occupations of human territory. A chill ran through the older delegates. The Zelthak hegemony was ancient history now, but those who remembered knew what had happened to them. They had been one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy, controlling thousands of worlds and commanding vast fleets. Then they had tried to enslave a human colony. Within 6 weeks, every Zelthak ship, station, and settlement had been reduced to floating debris. An entire civilization had simply ceased to exist. No survivors, no prisoners, no trace that they had ever ruled among the stars. The Zelthak were weak, Speaker Vorthak declared, but its voice lacked the confidence it had shown before. Ancient history has no bearing on current realities. Ancient history, Kang repeated thoughtfully. Yes, it has been 3,000 years since humanity last demonstrated why we were given our own territory in the galaxy. Perhaps it is time for a reminder. She looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of delegates from dozens of species. The Republic of Earth officially accepts the Vorthak Empire's declaration of war. We will respond accordingly. The way she said accordingly made several diplomats reach for their emergency communicators to warn their home governments. Is that all? Speaker Vorthak demanded. No pleas for mercy? No offers to negotiate? Kang turned to face the massive alien directly. Why would we negotiate with dead beings? The hall fell completely silent. Even the background hum of life support systems seemed to quiet. We have been preparing for this day for 3,000 years, Kang said quietly. The Vorthak Empire has given us permission to show the galaxy what that preparation has achieved. We are grateful for this opportunity. She bowed slightly to Speaker Vorthak, the polite gesture somehow more threatening than any weapon. We will begin shortly, she said, then walked back to her seat. As she sat down, folding her hands in her lap once again, Speaker Vorthak began to realize that its empire might have made a terrible mistake. But by then, it was far too late to take back the declaration. The 3,000-year peace was over and humanity was smiling. The observation deck of Station Alpha 7 hung in neutral space far from any star system. It served as a meeting place for historians, researchers, and other beings who dealt with old knowledge. Most visitors came to trade information or research ancient cultures that no longer existed. Elder Kyung floated in his specialized tank, tentacles dancing through the water as he worked at multiple data screens. His species lived for tens of thousands of years, which made him one of the few beings alive who had actually witnessed the first human war. Most others who remembered were either dead or had chosen to forget. The news from the Galactic Council had reached the station 6 hours ago. The Vorthak Empire had declared war on humanity. Already younger species were placing bets on how quickly the humans would surrender. Some gave them a week, others a few days. Kyung knew better. His tentacles moved faster as he pulled up archived files that hadn't been accessed in centuries. Video recording, sensor data, and witness reports from the Zelthak hegemony's final weeks. Most of these records had been sealed by galactic authorities, deemed too disturbing for general viewing. The first file showed peaceful first contact between humans and the greater galaxy. The humans had seemed friendly, curious, and eager to learn. Their technology was impressive but not threatening. They traded fairly, shared scientific knowledge, and generally made good neighbors. Everything changed when the Zelthak decided to expand into human space. The Zelthak hegemony had been one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. They controlled over 2,000 star systems and commanded fleets so vast they could block out suns. When they announced plans to claim a small human colony for their own use, most observers expected quick capitulation. The humans had other ideas. Kyung's primary display showed the timeline of what followed. Day 1, Zelthak fleets surrounded the human colony of New Perth. Day 2, the humans politely asked them to leave. Day 3, The Zelthak landed troops and declared the world part of their empire. Day 4. Everything went wrong. The first sign of trouble came when Zelthak communications with their fleet went silent. Not jammed, not attacked, simply silent. When rescue fleets arrived, they found empty space where 1,000 ships had been waiting. No debris, no energy signatures, no trace that the fleet had ever existed. Kyung's tentacles trembled as he reviewed the sensor data from that day. The recordings showed something that still made no sense after 3,000 years. The Zelthak ships hadn't been destroyed. They had been unmade. Every atom separated and scattered across space so thoroughly that even the most advanced sensors couldn't detect where they had gone. The war escalated quickly after that. The Zelthak threw everything they had at the humans, convinced that overwhelming force would succeed where subtlety had failed. Fleet after fleet jumped into human space, each one larger than the last. None of them ever came back. The pattern was always the same. Zelthak forces would arrive in a human system ready for battle. They would find empty space and a few small human stations. Then something would happen, something the sensors could never quite record properly, and the Zelthak would cease to exist. Kyung pulled up a communication from a Zelthak admiral, sent just before his fleet's final jump. The humans cannot be using conventional weapons. Our shields and armor are rated against anything in the known galaxy. Yet ship after ship simply vanishes when they engage human forces. It's as if the humans have found a way to edit matter out of existence. The war lasted exactly 43 days from start to finish. When it ended, the Zelthak hegemony was gone. Not defeated, not conquered, completely erased. 2,000 star systems that had been populated for millennia suddenly stood empty. Cities that had existed for millions of years were reduced to perfectly level ground. Even the graveyards had been cleaned away. The only thing the humans left behind was a message broadcast on all frequencies. This is what happens to slavers. Choose differently. Kyung's research had consumed decades of his life trying to understand how it had been possible. The humans had been outnumbered 1,000,000 to 1. They should have been crushed within hours. Instead, they had eliminated one of the galaxy's greatest powers without apparent effort. The scariest part wasn't the destruction itself. It was how the humans had carried it out. No anger, no dramatic speeches, no demands for surrender. They had approached genocide with the same calm efficiency most species use to file paperwork. After the war, the humans had appeared before the Galactic Council and made a simple request. Give them a section of space where they could live quietly, and they would never again interfere in galactic affairs. The traumatized council had agreed immediately, drawing up the armistice that had kept the peace for 3,000 years. Most species had been relieved when the humans retreated to their corner of the galaxy. The younger generations eventually forgot why everyone had been so afraid. But Kyung remembered, and his research had revealed a terrifying truth. The humans hadn't retreated out of kindness or exhaustion. They had been holding back during the entire war. Kyung's tentacles found a classified report from a galactic intelligence agency, written just after the armistice was signed. The analysis was chilling. Human technological capabilities appear to exceed anything in known space by several orders of magnitude. More concerning is their apparent psychological makeup. They show no emotional response to mass destruction and seem capable of maintaining perfect discipline, even while committing acts of total annihilation. Recommend permanent quarantine and monitoring. The report included estimates of human military capacity based on what little had been observed during the war. The numbers were staggering, but Kyung suspected they were still too low. The humans had ended the Zelthak hegemony using what appeared to be routine patrol ships and standard defensive measures. Now, 3,000 years later, the Vorthak Empire was about to learn the same lesson. Kyung's communicator chimed with an urgent message from the Galactic Council. They wanted all historical data on human military capabilities immediately. Apparently, someone had finally realized that letting the Vorthak start a war might have been a mistake. Too late, Kyung thought. Far too late. He began compiling the files anyway, though he doubted they would help. The galaxy was about to remember why some species were better left alone. The Vorthak had population counts and fleet sizes on their side, but the humans had something much more dangerous. They had 3,000 years of preparation time. Kyung's tentacles moved across the controls, sending out warnings to every government he could reach. Most would ignore him, dismissing his concerns as the paranoid ramblings of an ancient being. But a few might listen and a few might survive what was coming. The young species of the galaxy were about to learn an old lesson. There are predators in the dark between stars, and some of them look almost friendly until you threaten what they protect. Humanity was no longer the curious, eager species that had first joined galactic civilization. 3 millennia of isolation had changed them into something else entirely, something that had been waiting patiently for someone to give them permission to act. The Vorthak had just provided that permission. Kyung's final message went out to every major government in the galaxy. Do not send fleets to assist the Vorthak. Do not offer them sanctuary. When the humans finish their work, do not ask questions about what happened. Some knowledge is too dangerous to possess. He sealed the message with his personal authority codes and sent it into the galactic communication network. Then he settled back into his tank to wait. The second human war was about to begin, and this time there would be no armistice at the end. The humans had spent 3,000 years making sure of that. Deep inside the Sol system, Admiral Lee stood before a holographic display that would have driven most aliens insane. The amount of information flowing across the screens was too much for any single mind to process. But Lee wasn't entirely human anymore. None of them were. The modifications had been subtle at first. Enhanced memory, faster reflexes, improved pattern recognition. But 3,000 years of steady improvement had created something that looked human, but thought like a living computer. Lee could track 1 million different data streams while maintaining 3 separate conversations and planning fleet movements across 17 star systems. Right now, all of that enhanced intelligence was focused on a single task, making sure the galaxy never forgot this lesson. Status report, Lee said, not bothering to specify who should respond. The AI systems knew what information was needed. Vorthak fleet movements are proceeding as expected, came the reply from Captain Su, currently stationed near the edge of human space. They're massing forces at their staging areas just like the simulations predicted. Estimated time to first border crossing 72 hours. Lee nodded, studying the tactical displays. 3,000 years of preparation had led to this moment. The humans had used their isolation well, transforming their territory into something that would have been unrecognizable to their ancestors. Earth itself was the centerpiece of the transformation. What had once been a blue and green world was now a fortress that stretched far beyond the planet's original surface. Massive ring structures encircled the globe, each one capable of building fleets that could conquer entire sectors. The moon had been hollowed out and converted into the largest weapons research facility in known space. But Earth was just the beginning. Mars had become a manufacturing center so vast that its original surface was barely visible beneath the industrial complexes. The asteroid belt was now a shipyard that stretched across millions of miles, capable of producing more vessels in a single day than most species built in a century. What about the outer colonies? Lee asked. All systems report ready status, replied Commander Wan from the Centauri system. Hidden facilities are fully operational. Defense grids are active but concealed. Local populations have been evacuated to secure zones. That was another change the galaxy didn't know about. Humanity's 17 star systems were just what they allowed others to see. The real human territory included over 10,000 hidden worlds, each one a fortress designed to survive anything the galaxy could throw at them. The evacuation plans had been practiced for generations. When the alarm came, every civilian in human space had exactly 6 hours to reach designated shelters buried deep beneath planetary surfaces. The shelters were more than just hiding places. They were complete underground cities designed to support populations for centuries if necessary. Not that the war would last that long. Biological status report, Lee requested. Dr. Yoon's voice came through the communication system from a medical facility orbiting Jupiter. All combat personnel have completed final enhancement procedures. Reaction times are now operating at maximum efficiency. Pain response has been reduced to minimum levels. Emotional dampening systems are fully functional. Lee's expression didn't change, but a small part of the Admiral's mind noted the irony. The galaxy feared humans because of their capacity for violence, so humanity had spent 3 millennia making themselves even more efficient at it. They had removed the biological limitations that might cause hesitation, fear, or mercy during combat operations. What about the new technologies? Lee asked. Quantum displacement drives are ready for fleet deployment, reported Chief Engineer Park from the research station near Pluto. We can now move entire battle groups instantly across distances that would take conventional ships months to cross. The Vorthak won't know we're coming until we're already there. The quantum drives were just one of humanity's new advantages. 3,000 years of focused research had produced breakthroughs that bordered on magic. They could manipulate matter at the subatomic level, bend space-time to their will, and tap into energy sources that other species didn't even know existed. But the real advantage wasn't technological, it was psychological. Personnel evaluations? Lee inquired. All combat staff have passed final readiness tests, answered Colonel Kim from the military training facility on Europa. Emotional stability remains at optimal levels. No signs of hesitation or moral conflict regarding mission parameters. That was the key to everything. Other species went to war driven by anger, fear, or greed. Those emotions made them unpredictable and prone to mistakes. Humans had learned to fight with the same detached efficiency they brought to any other task. The enhancement procedures had helped, but the real change was cultural. For 3,000 years, every human child had been raised with a single understanding. They were the galaxy's necessary monsters. When the time came to act, they would do so without hesitation, without regret, and without mercy. Sir, Captain Sue's voice carried a note of professional interest. We're detecting increased Vorthak communication traffic. They appear to be having second thoughts about their timeline. Lee studied the intelligence reports flowing across the displays. Apparently, some of the older Vorthak commanders were beginning to remember why the humans had been left alone for so long. A few were even suggesting that perhaps the war should be postponed for further study. Too late for that, Lee said quietly. Monitor their communications, but don't interfere. Let them come. The truth was, humanity had been hoping for this moment. 3,000 years of isolation had been necessary, but it had also been frustrating. They had built the most advanced civilization in galactic history, created weapons that could reshape reality itself, and trained armies that could conquer the stars. But they had been forced to keep it all hidden, pretending to be weak and harmless while more aggressive species expanded across the galaxy. The Vorthak Empire's declaration of war wasn't just an attack, it was liberation. Finally, humanity had permission to show what they had become. Fleet positions, Lee asked. All task forces are in position and ready for immediate deployment, responded Admiral Cho from the command center on Luna. We have forces positioned within striking distance of every major Vorthak installation. When you give the word, we can begin simultaneous operations across their entire empire. Lee nodded, studying the tactical situation. The Vorthak thought they were attacking 17 small human worlds with their massive fleets. What they didn't realize was that humanity was already surrounding every Vorthak system with forces they couldn't detect. Estimated duration for complete operations? Lee asked. If we maintain current efficiency parameters, the Vorthak Empire will cease to exist within 6 standard days, Admiral Cho replied. That includes time for cleanup operations and verification that no installations have been missed. 6 days to eliminate a civilization that had existed for millennia. The old humans might have felt some regret about that. These humans felt nothing but professional satisfaction at a job well planned. Understood, Lee said. Maintain ready status. Operations will commence the moment Vorthak forces cross into our territory. The Admiral dismissed the holographic displays and walked to the observation deck. Through the reinforced windows, Earth looked like a mechanical flower, its ring structures catching the light of Sol as they rotated slowly through space. Millions of ships hung in parking orbits waiting for their orders to deploy. Soon, those ships would spread across the galaxy like a plague, hunting down every trace of the Empire that had been foolish enough to threaten humanity. The Vorthak would learn what the Zelthak had learned 3,000 years ago. Some sleeping giants should never be awakened, but this time there would be no armistice afterward. Humanity was finished with isolation. The galaxy would have new rulers whether it wanted them or not. The Vorthak Third Fleet had never known defeat. 500 of the Empire's finest warships, each one a masterpiece of military engineering, moved through space in perfect formation. Their hulls gleamed with defensive plating that could withstand the explosion of small suns. Their weapons could crack planets in half. Fleet Commander Grohl stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical displays with satisfaction. The fleet represented decades of construction and the finest military minds in Vorthak space. Nothing in the galaxy could stand against such overwhelming force. Certainly not the pathetic humans hiding in their corner of space. "Sir," reported his sensor officer, "we are approaching the outer edge of the Tau Ceti system. No significant defensive installations detected." Grohl's forearms crossed over his chest in a gesture of supreme confidence. The humans had been given 3,000 years to prepare for this moment, and apparently they had wasted the time. His scouts reported only a handful of small stations and what appeared to be a single patrol ship. "One ship?" Grohl asked, almost disappointed. "That is their entire defensive response?" "Sensors confirm, sir. Single vessel appears to be a light cruiser, approximately 400 meters in length. No escort vessels detected." Grohl's laughter echoed through the bridge. 400 meters? His flagship alone was over 3 kilometers long, and that was just one ship out of 500. The humans weren't even trying to put up a real fight. "Open communications with the human vessel," he ordered. "Let's give them a chance to surrender before we destroy them." The communication screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the human ship. The captain appeared to be a small female, wearing a simple blue uniform with no decorations or medals. She looked bored, as if meeting an invasion fleet was just another routine duty. "This is Captain Wu of the human space vessel Determination," she said in a calm voice. "You are entering territory controlled by the Republic of Earth. State your business." Grohl leaned forward, his massive form filling the communication screen. "I am Fleet Commander Grohl of the Vorthak Third Fleet. You will surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in the destruction of your ship and all crew." Captain Wu looked at something off-screen, probably checking her tactical displays. When she turned back, her expression hadn't changed at all. "This is your only warning. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." "Warning?" Grohl's voice rose in disbelief. "You dare threaten 500 warships with a single patrol boat?" "I'm not threatening you," Captain Wu replied. "I'm simply informing you of your options. You have 30 seconds to begin your withdrawal." Grohl's skin shifted to a deep purple, the Vorthak color of rage. "Destroy that ship immediately. Show these arrogant humans what real power looks like." The weapons officer's hands moved across his controls, targeting systems locking onto the small human vessel. Around the fleet, hundreds of other ships did the same, enough firepower to destroy a moon focused on one tiny target. "All ships report ready to fire," the weapons officer announced. "Fire at will," Grohl commanded. The space around the Determination lit up as hundreds of energy beams and missile warheads converged on the human ship. The amount of destructive force unleashed would have vaporized anything in known space. When the light faded, the human ship was gone. "Target destroyed," the weapons officer reported with satisfaction. "Good," Grohl said. "Now we can proceed to the inner system and—" "Sir," the sensor officer's voice carried a note of panic. "The human ship? It's directly behind us." Grohl spun around to look at the rear tactical display. Impossible. The Determination sat in space less than a kilometer behind his flagship, completely undamaged. It hadn't moved around the fleet, it had simply appeared there, as if it had stepped sideways through reality itself. "How did they—" Grohl began. Captain Wu's voice came through the communication system, calm as ever. "You were warned. Now face the consequences." The human ship fired once. Not a barrage of weapons, not a sustained assault, just a single pulse of energy that seemed almost gentle compared to the massive bombardment the fleet had just unleashed. The pulse spread outward from the Determination like a ripple in still water, washing over the Vorthak ships without any visible effect. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the flagship's engines went silent. "Engineering report," Grohl shouted. "Sir, we're reading total system failure across all decks. Engines, weapons, life support, communications, everything is shutting down simultaneously. I don't understand what's happening." Grohl looked at his tactical displays, watching in growing horror as the same thing happened to every ship in his fleet. 500 of the most advanced warships in Vorthak space, reduced to drifting metal in 17 seconds. "This is impossible," he whispered. "Our systems are hardened against any known form of attack. Nothing should be able to penetrate our defenses." Captain Wu's face appeared on the communication screen again. "Your mistake was assuming that you knew the limits of what was possible. Humanity has spent 3,000 years expanding those limits. What did you do to our ships?" Grohl demanded. "We turned them off," Captain Wu explained, as if she were describing how to operate a simple switch. Your ship's systems are now operating under our control rather than yours. We could turn them back on if we wanted to. We don't want to. Grohl watched his sensor displays as they began showing something even more terrifying than system failures. The hulls of his ships were starting to dissolve, not melting or exploding, simply ceasing to exist atom by atom in perfect order. "You're disintegrating our ships," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Recycling," Captain Wu corrected. "The materials will be put to better use. We're quite efficient about these things." Around the flagship, 499 Vorthak warships faded away like morning mist. Decades of construction, millions of crew members, and the pride of an empire, all reduced to component atoms in less than a minute. "Why?" Grohl asked. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you declared war on us," Captain Wu replied. "The Vorthak Empire wanted to demonstrate its power by conquering human space. We are demonstrating why that was a poor decision." Grohl's ship was the last one left, its hull slowly dissolving from the outside in. Emergency systems screamed warnings that no one could act upon. The crew ran through corridors that were disappearing beneath their feet. "Please," Grohl said, his anger replaced by desperate fear. "We surrender. Call off your attack. We'll withdraw immediately." Captain Wu studied him with the same expression she might wear while examining an interesting insect. "The time for surrender was 30 seconds ago. You chose violence instead. But you can't destroy an entire fleet. The galaxy has laws. There are rules about warfare." "Yes," Captain Wu agreed. "And those rules say that when someone declares war on you, you are permitted to defend yourself. We are defending ourselves very thoroughly." The bridge around Grohl began to fade away. He could see stars through what had been solid bulkheads moments before. His crew was dissolving along with the ship, their atoms being carefully separated and catalogued for future use. "Tell me," Captain Wu said, her voice now coming from speakers that no longer existed. "How many warnings did you give the colonies you conquered? How much mercy did you show to the species you enslaved?" Grohl tried to answer, but he no longer had vocal cords to speak with. "We thought so," Captain Wu continued. "The Republic of Earth extends the same mercy to its enemies that they showed to others. In your case, that appears to be none at all." The last thing Grohl saw was Captain Wu's face on a screen that was rapidly becoming transparent. She was making notes on a datapad, recording the engagement with the same detached professionalism a researcher might show while documenting an experiment. "Engagement complete," she said to someone off-screen. "All targets eliminated. Total time 4 minutes 12 seconds. Proceeding to next patrol coordinates." Then there was nothing but empty space and a few traces of exotic radiation that would fade within hours. The determination turned and disappeared again, stepping sideways through dimensions that other species couldn't even detect. It had work to do. The Vorthak had sent dozens of fleets toward human space, and each one needed to receive the same educational demonstration. Light years away, at Vorthak High Command, emergency communications began flooding in from across the Empire. Fleet after fleet was simply vanishing as it approached human territory. Not destroyed in battle, not defeated by superior numbers, just erased as if they had never existed. The Vorthak Empire was learning what the Zeltek had learned 3,000 years earlier. Humanity didn't fight wars the way other species did. They simply removed obstacles to peace. And the Vorthak Empire had just declared itself a very large obstacle. The demonstration was only beginning. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called after 3 days of increasingly desperate reports from the Vorthak front lines. What had begun as confident updates about invasion progress had quickly turned into confused distress calls. Then silence. Representative Pak sat in the human section of the Great Hall, reviewing data on her personal tablet while chaos erupted around her. Delegates from hundreds of species argued, shouted, and demanded explanations for something none of them could understand. The Vorthak Empire was disappearing, not losing battles or retreating in defeat, simply ceasing to exist. One system at a time with mechanical precision that terrified even the most warlike species in the galaxy. "Order! Order!" the council speaker demanded, its ancient voice cutting through the noise. "Representative Pak, the council requires an explanation for humanity's actions." Pak looked up from her tablet with the same calm expression she had worn 3 days earlier when accepting the Vorthak declaration of war. "Which actions specifically require explanation?" The question sent fresh waves of outrage through the assembled delegates. The Christek Collective representative spoke first, its voice like breaking glass. Your forces have eliminated 17 Vorthak fleets without warning or provocation. The Vorthak Empire declared war on the Republic of Earth, Pak replied. We responded to their fleets in accordance with standard military doctrine. Standard doctrine? The Altarian delegate's blue skin had turned a pale shade that indicated extreme distress. You erased 500 warships in minutes. That's not warfare, that's efficient, Pa suggested helpfully. The word hung in the air like a physical presence. Around the hall, delegates who had initially supported the Vorthak expansion began to look uncomfortable. A few were quietly updating their governments on the need to review any pending territorial disputes with human neighbors. The council speaker tried to maintain order. The concern is not the fact of your defensive response, but the comprehensive nature of your actions. Reports indicate that you are not simply defeating Vorthak forces, but completely eliminating them. Pak nodded. That is correct. When the Vorthak Empire declared war, they became a threat to human citizens. We are addressing that threat in the most thorough manner possible. But surely, the hegemony of Keth's representative interjected, there are limits to legitimate self-defense, rules of engagement, principles of proportional response? Yes, Pa agreed. And humanity follows those rules carefully. When someone declares their intention to conquer our territory and enslave our population, the proportional response is to ensure they can never make that attempt again. She touched her tablet, and holographic displays appeared throughout the hall showing real-time footage from Vorthak space. The images were clinical, almost beautiful in their precision. Vorthak installations simply faded away like computer graphics being deleted from a program. There was no violence, no explosions, no visible suffering, just systematic removal of everything that had made the Vorthak Empire a threat. You're committing genocide, the delegate from the Peaceful Worlds Alliance whispered. No, Pak corrected. We are conducting a police action against an aggressive military force. The Vorthak people were given multiple opportunities to avoid this outcome. They chose war instead. Multiple opportunities? The Vorthak's surviving representative, one of the few who had been off-world when the systematic elimination began, spoke from his emergency transmission booth. You gave us 30 seconds to withdraw. Each fleet was given 30 seconds, Pak clarified. Your empire had 3,000 years to avoid this situation entirely. You chose to break the Armistice instead. The truth of that statement settled over the hall like a cold wind. For 3 millennia, humanity had kept to their territory, avoided galactic politics, and posed no threat to anyone. The Vorthak had destroyed that peace for no reason other than greed. What happens when you finish with the Vorthak? Asked the delegate from the Trading Federation. Do you simply return to your territory as if nothing happened? Pak looked thoughtful for a moment, as if considering the question for the first time. No, the old armistice is ended. Humanity will no longer accept isolation from galactic affairs. The temperature in the hall seemed to drop several degrees. Hundreds of alien minds began calculating what that might mean for their own governments and territories. What exactly are you proposing? The council speaker asked carefully. A new arrangement, Pa replied, one that ensures this situation never arises again. She stood and walked to the center platform, her small human form drawing the attention of every delegate in the vast hall. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly to every corner of the chamber. For 3,000 years, the galaxy has enjoyed peace because humanity was contained. That peace was broken not by us, but by those who believed we had grown weak in our isolation. They were wrong. The holographic displays around the hall updated, showing the current status of the Vorthak Empire. In 3 days, humanity had eliminated 70% of their military forces and 30% of their civilian infrastructure. The process was accelerating as more human forces reached their targets. The galaxy now has a choice, Pak continued. You can accept humanity's guidance in maintaining peace, or you can share the Vorthak Empire's fate. Guidance? The word came from dozens of translators as delegates struggled to understand what the human was proposing. Wars will require our approval, Pak explained calmly. Acts of slavery, genocide, or systematic oppression will result in immediate intervention. Trade disputes will be resolved through arbitration rather than violence. The strong will no longer be permitted to prey upon the weak. You're talking about conquest, the Altarian delegate protested. You want to rule the entire galaxy? We want to manage it, Pa corrected. There is a difference. We have no interest in governing your internal affairs or interfering with your cultural development. We simply intend to ensure that those affairs remain internal and peaceful. She touched her tablet again, and new displays appeared showing human capabilities that had never been revealed before. Fleets that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. Weapons that operated on principles beyond current understanding. Industrial capacity that could rebuild entire sectors of space. You have been conducting intelligence operations against us for centuries, Pot noted. Your estimates of our capabilities have been consistently low by factors of thousands. This is because we have been very careful to hide our true strength. The displays showed manufacturing centers that spanned entire star systems, research facilities that twisted space-time itself, and population centers that suggested humanity had been far from idle during their isolation. How? The council speaker asked, its ancient voice carrying genuine curiosity. How did a single species develop such overwhelming advantages? Evolution, Pa replied simply. Humanity evolved on a death world, surrounded by predators and environmental hazards that would kill most galactic species within hours. We learned to be better predators than anything else on our planet. She gestured to the displays showing Vorthak territory, where the systematic elimination continued with mechanical precision. When we joined galactic civilization, we brought those instincts with us. The Zelthek Empire learned what happens when prey animals try to threaten predators. Now the Vorthak are learning the same lesson. But surely, the delegate from the Scientific Coalition interjected, intelligence and civilization should allow us to move beyond such primitive concepts as predator and prey? Pak's smile was small and cold. Intelligence and civilization are tools. They can be used to build art, literature, and philosophy. They can also be used to hunt more efficiently. The delegate fell silent, apparently reconsidering the wisdom of further questions. The new arrangement is not negotiable, Pa continued. Humanity has tried isolation, and that experiment has failed. We will now try active management of galactic affairs. Those who cooperate will find us to be fair and reasonable rulers. Those who resist will find us to be very thorough exterminators. She returned to her seat, folding her hands in her lap with the same calm composure she had shown throughout the session. The hall erupted in noise as delegates frantically communicated with their home governments. Some species immediately began drafting surrender documents. Others tried to form alliances against the human threat. A few simply sat in stunned silence, trying to process the magnitude of what had just been announced.